Chapter 21. Reaping What One Has Sown. 3. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 21. Reaping What One Has Sown. 3. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. However, Shen Yanxiao, whom she had ridiculed all her life, stood in front of her and only looked at her as she shrieked miserably from within the flames. Her usually confused and dreamy eyes were replaced with traces of unfamiliarity and disdain that frightened Shen Jie. Shen Yanxiao quietly stood in front of the bonfire and looked at Shen Jie's miserable appearance as the flames swallowed her. She knew that the fire couldn't burn the magic. Train Shen Jie to her death. It would only cause some superficial wounds, and so, she was not worried if Shen Jie would die in the fire. She just had to stand rooted at that spot and quietly appreciate the face that was distorted by pain. Shen Jie, who still stood guard at the door, felt that something was amiss when he heard the anguished scream from the room. As the shouts from a familiar voice turned mournful, he suddenly realized what had happened and pushed the door open with a bang. The instant he opened the door, he saw Shen Jie as she struggled in the angry flames. What shocked him was the scene where he saw Shen Yanxiao stand before the blaze with a smile. "Jie, save me." Since the burnt wooden table blocked her, Shen Jie couldn't free herself. The angry flames scorched her skin, and as fear gripped her, she could only cry for help from her little brother. Only then did Shen Jie recover his senses. Without the time to ponder about the unfamiliar wicked smile on Shen Yanxiao's face, he hastily ran out to seek help. Not long later, Shen Yu brought a group of men into Shen Yanxiao's room. After a few buckets of water, the fire was finally extinguished. As for Shen Jie, she had already lost consciousness due to fright and her weakened state after she was tortured by the flames. Shen Feng and Shen Siyu had also arrived in the room. They reached slightly later, and their expressions soured after they saw the mess in the room. Shen Feng stood at the door and frowned as he watched a furious Shen Yu hug Shen Jie. Before he had the chance to ask anything, Shen Siyu, who originally stood beside him, went up to Shen Yanxiao's side and pulled her to a corner to examine for injuries. "Shen Yanxiao, this is all you're doing." Shen Yu's heart ached as he looked at the daughter in his embrace. If it were not for Shen Feng's presence, he would have pounced on Shen Yanxiao and tore her into pieces. Shen Siyu pulled Shen Yanxiao to his back and shielded her as he questioned Shen Yu. "Why did second uncle say so? How is this related to Xiao Xiao? How is this not related to her?" Shen Jie was injured in her room, and evidently, this vile spawn harbored evil thoughts and wanted harm Jie. No matter what Shen Feng thought, he had never once believed that Shen Yanxiao was part of their Vermilion Bird family's bloodline. To raise that kind of trash in their family was already a disgrace, and then she caused troubles, one after another, and even injured his daughter. How could he possibly tolerate her existence? Shen Siyu's usual gentle eyes narrowed, and a dangerous glint flashed in his eyes. "Shut your mouth." Shen Feng shouted and glared at Shen Yu for his irresponsible statement. "I will only say this one more time. She is Shen Yu's daughter. If anyone else dares to disregard this fact, then you had better get lost." Shen Yu could only grind his teeth, then suppress his internal fury, and said, "Father. Jie is your biological granddaughter, and now that this trash had injured her, don't tell me that you intend to disregard this." Shen Jie was Shen Feng's granddaughter, but wasn't she also his granddaughter? Shen Yanxiao stood behind Shen Siyu and inwardly sneered. Chapter 22. Demanding an exorbitant amount. 1. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 22. Demanding an exorbitant amount. 1. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. If my memory serves me correctly, Shen Jie's magic should have reached the 5th rank. Is second uncle trying to say that Shen Jie, who is a 5th-ranked magic user, was injured by Xiao Xiao, who does not have a single ounce of battle aura or magic? Shen Siyu's usually gentle face showed a hint of anger. That trace of anger gave the typically elegant and polite young man an imposing aura. Shen Yu had also sensed Shen Siyu's powerful and oppressive aura, and that was why he was secretly a little apprehensive about the situation at hand. How powerful was that kid to release such a powerful aura? An idiot without any battle aura or magic could injure a 5th-ranked magic apprentice. If that information were to leak out, it would undoubtedly become the #1 joke in Longxian Empire for the next 100 years. Not even Shen Yu could accept such a fact, let alone Shen Feng. If that were true, wouldn't that mean that the daughter that he had been so proud of was inferior to an idiotic trash? Shen Yu's face paled, and then it turned green, and lastly, purple. Jiawei, tell us exactly what happened. Shen Feng questioned as he furrowed his brows. The incident had happened in Shen Yanxiao's room, and the most logical outcome of Shen Jiayi and Shen Jiawei's appearance in her room was that she'd be the one in trouble. However, the opposite of that reasonable hypothesis had happened, with an unconscious Shen Jiayi and a pale-faced Shen Jiawei. Shen Jiawei was quite fearful of the usually reserved Shen Feng. Even though he was his grandfather, they were not very close. When his grandfather called him by his name, Shen Jiawei gulped and unconsciously looked at Shen Yanxiao, who stayed hidden and protected behind Shen Siyu. That Shen Yanxiao seemed to have returned to her former ignorant self, and that previous wicked appearance had disappeared entirely. Even so, that brief scene was firmly imprinted in his mind, and he didn't know why he didn't feel any contempt or disdain when he looked at Shen Yanxiao then. Instead, he felt only an overwhelming sense of unwillingness. Say something. Shen Yu got extremely angry when he saw his son stared ahead blankly like a fool. Shen Jiawei quivered and hastily said, I don't know anything. It was Sis who tasked me to guard the door from the outside, so I don't know what had happened inside the room. If it were a regular occasion, Shen Jiawei would frame Shen Yanxiao without a moment of hesitation. Even if he weren't a witness to the situation, he would still shift the blame onto her. However, there seemed to be a huge weight that pressed upon his heart, and he did not dare to slander her. He did not wish to see that horrible smile on her face again. Guard the door. Shen Siyu shot an angry glance at Shen Jiawei, and he immediately shrunk his neck like a frightened quail and hid to the side. Shen Feng's frown deepened. They still had no clue as to what had happened, and Shen Yanxiao's wisdom was only like a 4-year-old child. He knew he would not be able to get her to divulge any useful information, and Shen Jiayi was still unconscious. Let's bring her back for now and have Shen Qiu to check up on her. Do you all think that the recent happenings aren't enough? Why are you all still standing here? Go and do what you should be doing. Shen Feng had a headache. At that time, he was supposed to put all of his focus to awaken the vermilion bird, but who would have thought that he also had to care about pointless arguments between unruly kids? With Shen Feng's orders, everyone had no choice but to do as he said. Shen Yu was extremely unsatisfied, but he decided to leave with Shen Jiayi and Shen Jiawei. Shen Feng had also left after he gave out a few more orders. Chapter 23. Demanding an exorbitant amount. 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 23. Demanding an exorbitant amount. 2. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. In the end, only Shen Siyu and Shen Yanxiao were left in the room. Don't be afraid. Shen Siyu patted her shoulders and then looked at the pile of presents that were burnt to ashes. He then said, I'll have someone send these over again tomorrow. Xiao, don't worry, who would worry about those toys? Shen Yanxiao inwardly rolled her eyes. Other than the slight regrets about the pastries, she did not care for those beautiful, yet useless toys that were meant for children before schooling age at all. After Shen Jiayi's unfortunate incident in Shen Yanxiao's room, the two unruly twins no longer harassed her in the subsequent days. Shen Siyu rarely had the time to accompany Shen Yanxiao because Shen Feng had other orders for him. As a result, Xiu forced her to continue with the Spartan training again. The training for magic and battle aura had a speedy progression at the beginning. However, the speed slowed down when they approached the 6th rank. They trained for 4 consecutive days, but Shen Yanxiao's battle aura and magic only managed to reach the 4th and 5th rank respectively. That kind of speed was unimaginable for the ordinary folks, but it was extraordinarily slow for Shen Yanxiao, who managed to advance 1 rank each day during her previous training. Damn it, why am I not improving? Shen Yanxiao ended her training for the day when night fell. However, it seemed that her training had reached a bottleneck. There was slight progress in her battle aura training, but it was still quite a distance to advance to the 5th rank. Her magic training, however, had come to a complete stop. Shen Yanxiao was used to her previous rocket-like speed in the progression of her training, and so she was not accustomed to the slow training speed that she seemed to have been stuck in. The unlocking of your first seal will only allow you to obtain the physique to train in battle aura and magic. As long as you still have the second seal, your subsequent advancement will be much slower, and when you reach a certain rank, it'll come to a standstill. Xiu's voice timely said. What exactly is this seal? Shen Yanxiao felt depressed. What about her plans to repay the grudge 100-fold and to climb up the family head position of the Vermilion Bird family? If what Xiu said were true, then she probably would not be able to progress further after a certain rank. It was quite enjoyable when they undid the first seal, but the follow-up issues that they encountered was quite problematic. Haven't I already explained that it was to suppress your strength? Undoing the first seal is only a start, and if you wish to become powerful, you have to undo the subsequent seals. When that's done, not only can you continue to advance, but your previously suppressed strength will also burst forth. As always, Xiu's voice was calm and without any fluctuations, and it also had some traces of aloofness in it. Then how can I unlock the second seal? Shen Yanxiao asked. Xiu turned silent for a brief moment before he said only 2 words. Demon Beast. Demon beasts were evil creatures that hid in the shadows of the entire Brilliance continent. They were neither humans, magical beasts, nor normal animals, and they were an extremely evil existence that fed on livestock and humans. The more powerful they were, the stronger the strength they possessed. Ordinary demon beasts were savages, while the higher-level beasts could morph into human appearances and conceal themselves in areas where humans lived while they sought for their next target. A human's internal organs were the demon beast's favorite food. It was similar to the temptation of gourmet food to a human. In the Brilliance continent, many humans were either killed or eaten by those demon beasts, and there was even a period where their numbers had seriously endangered the survival of humans there. That situation forced several empires within the continent to join hands for their armies to launch an offensive attack against those demon beasts. Chapter 24. Demanding an exorbitant amount. 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 24. Demanding an exorbitant amount. 3. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. Although that collaborative attack had annihilated most of the demon beasts at places where humans lived, their numbers were still far more than that. The demon beasts illegally occupied lands outside of places where humans lived, and those places were then known as the Forbidden Region. It was a desolate place that was unsuitable for humans. The place where Shen Yanxiao and her family lived was cleared of most demon beasts, although there were still appearances from the occasional low-level ones. The high-level demon beasts could morph into humans, and they had hid amongst humans in cities. It was difficult to hunt them because they were extremely crafty and would vanish from the crime scene after every attack. The people in Longxian Empire were terrified of the demon beasts. It would usually trigger a huge commotion if someone had heard of a demon beast attack. To some extent, Shen Yanxiao understood the world that she was in. As for the demon beasts, she had heard of them too. However, she did not understand how a savage creature like a demon beast could be linked to the process to undo her seal. I need to absorb the energy from a demonic core to recover my strength. Once my strength recovers, I will be able to undo your next seal. O.org. Shen Yanxiao was briefly stunned with what Xiu told her. When a magical beast died, they would leave behind their magical core that contained their powers. A demon beast would also have a core that held their powers, and it was aptly named as the demonic core. Magical cores were extremely popular because they could be embedded into weapons. Magic and battle aura users would then be able to use those weapons to release powerful energy bursts. The power inside a magical core would be increased proportionally to the power that the magical beast held before its death. However, a demonic core and a magical core was not the same thing. The power in a magical core was incredibly pure, and they could be directly utilized, but a demonic core contained exceptionally dense and dark aura. Even though a demonic core was also very powerful, most people would not be able to withstand the sinister aura that radiated from it. If someone used a weapon that was embedded with a demonic core for an extended period, their bodies would eventually be corroded by the sinister aura contained in the core. There was a simpler way to explain what the demonic core could do to a person. In a less than good case scenario, a person would lose all of their reasoning skills, and in a worst case scenario, that person would die. Only an expert with an extremely powerful mental energy would dare to utilize a demonic core. Furthermore, they would only dare to use a demonic core that was lower than their level. In any case, demonic cores were like chicken ribs. They were tasteless, but it was also regrettable if they were thrown away. She did not expect that the chicken-rib-like item was the key for Xiao to recover his strength. She could only file that as someone else's unique preference in life. It's not difficult to get a hold of a demonic core. When the empires joined hands to eliminate those demon beasts, they managed to get a large quantity of those demonic cores. Those cores aren't in high demand, and you can purchase them from auction houses. Shen Yanxiao made use of her recently acquired knowledge that she had crammed in her head. It did not matter to her if Xiao had a peculiar taste for those demonic cores since it was something that could be easily accomplished. However, at that moment, it seemed like she had only one problem: she had no money. Since she was an idiotic trash and a leech, the Vermilion Bird family only provided her with food and clothing. Why would they give her pocket money? Other than the 2 pouches that she stole from those 2 servant maids, her hands had been clean, and her purse was almost non-existent. Even though the demonic cores were not as expensive as magical cores, they were not rotten cabbages either. With the amount of money that she had, 1 or 2 low-grade demonic cores should still be well within her budget. Chapter 25. Thief God Strikes Out, 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 25. Thief God Strikes Out, 1. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. Of course, she doubted that 1 or 2 low-grade demonic core was sufficient for a certain someone to even fill the gap between his teeth. Ever since Shen Yanxiao grew up and became sensible, it was the first time that she had encountered a monetary problem. How many low-grade demonic cores do you think you'd need to recover your strength to undo my second seal? Shen Yanxiao asked. Xiao paused briefly before he revealed a number that shocked Shen Yanxiao so much that she'd puke blood if she could. 30,000. 30,000, Shen Yanxiao then went silent. She couldn't even afford 3,000, let alone 30. High-grade demonic cores would be best because then, I'd only require around 2,000 of those. It was rare for Xiao to be considerate. I'd only require around 2,000 of those. Only around 2,000. Shen Yanxiao facepalmed. The empires only managed to eliminate around 10,000 of high-level demon beasts that year, and those were then split equally between them. At that time, the total amount of high-grade demonic cores that Longxian Empire possessed was probably no more than 4,000, and a certain lord had the audacity to ask for 2,000 of those. Unless she wore a crown decorated with precious gems and sat on a golden high throne, it was impossible for her to get such a quantity of demonic cores, even if her wealth was comparable to the other empires. Let's discuss low-grade demonic core instead. There was no need to think about high-grade demonic cores because Shen Yanxiao would only be able to get her hands on the low-grade ones. After the wave of the military campaign ended, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of demon beasts would have been slaughtered. 30,000 demonic cores would not be impossible, as long as she had the money for them. The Vermilion Bird family was very wealthy, after all. They were publicly recognized as one of the 5 great aristocratic families in Longxian Empire. Even if their wealth could not rival other countries, they were still considered as notably affluent. If Shen Feng was in a good mood, to buy 30,000 demonic cores was as simple as to obtain a stick of candied fruit. However, the problem was that Shen Yanxiao could not ask for it, and she did not have any bargaining chip to request Shen Feng to fork out the money for that. At that moment, Shen Yanxiao's only problem was a monetary one. On a positive note, Shen Yanxiao rejoiced over her excellent selection of the profession in her past life. She was a thief goddess, for goodness sake. To her, money was like stones that littered the floor. If she had chosen to be a killer or a spy, then she would have probably ended up rotting in a dark corner somewhere. Only 30,000 demonic cores. Don't worry, with this lord's skill, you will certainly puke from overeating. Shen Yanxiao was considerably confident of her skills. Furthermore, she was currently situated within the affluent Vermilion Bird family, and any of their random second-generation or third-generation member would have at least 10,000 with them if not more. She would definitely take advantage of that situation. A certain someone decided to overlook Shen Yanxiao's self-proclaimed Lord because of the words puke from overeating. Eventually, during one dark and stormy night, a skinny black silhouette appeared in the courtyards of the homes in the Vermilion Bird family's compound. She found many opportunities to stretch her evil claws towards those full and dependable wallets. The next morning, just as the first rays of sunlight shone down on Mother Earth, waves of mournful wails exploded within the quiet rooms of the Vermilion Bird family. Fuck, where's my money? Shit. Where did this reckless thief come from? How dare he to steal my money? That's all the money for my marriage. I don't want to continue living anymore. In just one night, more than 20 members of the Vermilion Bird family suffered from her acts of thievery. Chapter 26. Thief God Strikes Out, 2, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 26. Thief God Strikes Out, 2, Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. Inside the main house, Shen Feng's face was as black as a pot. Shen Duan and Shen Yifeng, who represented the second-generation the third-generation members respectively, stood with him and all of them looked as if they had no color on their faces. Everyone, other than Shen Feng, had had their wallets wiped clean, and it was probably because he was the most important member of the Vermilion Bird family. Some of their Goldweg collections had also disappeared without a trace. Out of everyone, the one that suffered most was Shen Jing. Shen Jin had purchased a lot of pearls and jewels because he liked to gift them to the beauties, so that he could undergo a deeper interaction with them. He had also bought a large batch of high-quality gems from the jeweler just a few days ago. However, before he could gift them to those beautiful women, they were emptied from the jewelry box. What infuriated him most was that heartless little thief also dug out the few gems that were embedded in the jewelry box. Shen Jing did not dare to calculate his losses. He only knew that in the subsequent months, he would have to bid farewell to those beauties. Ever since the Vermilion Bird family was founded, they had never once suffered a massive loss like this. The sum of money that they had lost was only like a drop of water in the ocean. However, it was the thief's attitude that enraged them. In just a single night, the thief had managed to rob all of the important members of the Vermilion Bird family, and none of them noticed anything throughout the entire process, and even allowed the thief to plunder a considerable sum of money. It was as if the thief looked down on them. Shen Feng could not ignore the matter because it escalated from a monetary issue to a matter of their prestige. All of you are good for nothing. Someone snuck into your room and stole all of your money, and you slept through it all. Shen Feng was very angry with the situation. Even though the Vermilion Bird family could not awaken the Vermilion Bird for over hundreds of years, but the strength of his offspring had not been a disgrace for the family. However, it seemed as if they were all idiots to allow someone to infiltrate their rooms and stole all of their money, while none of them sensed a single thing. Father, how can we be blamed? That person must have come prepared. Furthermore, their skills are comparable to the ringleader of Silver Hands. Even second brother did not notice anything was amiss, and so that proves just how skillful that person was. Shen Jing, who had lost the most, explained bitterly. Shen Feng frowned when Shen Jing mentioned the Silver Hands. The Silver Hands was an organization of thieves in the Brilliance continent with the most widespread reputation. All of their members were reported to have exceptional skills, and the ringleader was purportedly the most proficient. It was rumored that he could steal anything that he had set his eyes on. Don't tell me that it was people from the Silver Hands, Shen Yifeng muttered to himself. The thief had taken a lot from him too. Impossible. Shen Feng waved his hand and said, the Silver Hands are established in the faraway God Wind Alliance. Even if they have members lurking in Longxian Empire, there would only be a few of them, and with no great skills. It's impossible for them to steal from beneath our noses. Then could it be the ringleader of the Silver Hands? Shen Yu asked. Shen Feng shook his head. Although he is arrogant, he would not be so unbridled to oppose the Vermilion Bird family in Longxian Empire. Furthermore, he has a habit of informing his targets if he intends to steal from them. Everyone was perplexed when Shen Feng excluded the Silver Hands from their list of suspects. Was there another thief, one that had exceptional skills, but yet to be taken in by the Silver Hands? Chapter 27. Thief God Strikes Out, 3, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 27. Thief God Strikes Out, 3, Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. There was indeed a goddess-level thief that was not affiliated with the Silver Hands, and that particular thief had probably not even heard of their name. While everyone else was at their wits' end with the theft from the day before, a certain thief beamed with smiles as she returned from her rewarding journey. She sat on top of the big pile of loot and enjoyed herself as she looked at her harvest with deep appreciation. A person with Shenduan status clearly had no lack of money. However, the main bulk of their vast wealth had been stored in a bank, and they did not have much on hand. Therefore, the amount of cash that Shen Yanxiao looted was not really a huge sum. The goldware and pieces of jewelry that she managed to steal turned out to be the main attraction of the show. The problem that plagued her then was that she did not know how to turn those items into cash. The only thing that she could consider was an auction house. If she brought those items to the auction house, they would give her cash that was equivalent to the value of those items. However, she realized that she had another problem. Even though she had tried to avoid any unique-looking items, she was not convinced that the owners of the things that she had stolen would not recognize the pieces as theirs. Although she was confident that the Vermilion Bird family would not reveal the theft to anyone outside the family, it was still possible for them to ask the auction houses in private. For the ordinary auction houses, even though they had some protection for the seller's personal information, they might still succumb to the Vermilion Bird family's influence to reveal some information to them. If she had wanted to sell those items, then she would have to find an auction house that the Vermilion Bird family could not question nor get any information out of them. There were dozens of auction houses in a city as big as the capital of Longxian Empire. Out of those, there were only 3 reputable auction houses, and one of them was run by one of the 5 great aristocratic families, the Qilin family, which was named as the Qilin Auction House. Both the Vermilion Bird family and the Qilin family were part of the 5 great aristocratic families. However, from Shen Yanxiao's observations, she deduced that both families privately itched to fight the other and only looked polite and amiable on the surface. She knew that if she brought those items to the Qilin auction house, the Vermilion Bird family would not stoop so low as to inquire about their stolen items there. They knew that the Qilin family would not reveal a single piece of information even if they had asked. Xiao was not interested in the human's wealth. His only interest was whether those items could be exchanged for sufficient demonic cores. As for Shen Yanxiao's goddess-like thieving skills, he did not intend to question her even though he had his suspicions. Since she had chosen the Qilin auction house as her target, Shen Yanxiao had no choice but to prepare something else beforehand. Even though most people had never seen the trash of the Vermilion Bird family, there was no guarantee that the Qilin family would not recognize her in the future. To protect her identity from discovery, Shen Yanxiao decided to head to another auction house to purchase a few bottles of disguise potion with the money that she had. Disguise potions were a rather common potion and were categorized into 3 different grades: low, middle, and high. The grades of the disguise potion determined the duration of the disguise, and there was also a huge difference in terms of the prices. That night, Shen Yanxiao snuck out of the Vermilion Bird family's compound with a huge cloak and ran to a small auction house in the capital to purchase 5 low-grade disguise potions. Even though they were low-grade potions, 5 small bottles had cost her 500 gold, and that caused the cash-strapped Shen Yanxiao some heartache. Chapter 28 Qilin Auction House 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 28 Qilin Auction House 1. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. A low-grade disguise potion could only maintain a disguise for 3 hours, but it was enough for Shen Yanxiao. For convenience sake, she also purchased a low-grade interspatial ring. Interspatial rings were meant for storage use. Even though it looked identical to regular rings, the wielder had to use a particular method to activate it for use. Upon activation, a specific area of space would appear depending on the grade of the ring, and it can be used to store any inanimate items. Interspatial rings were very common in the Brilliance continent, and they came in different grades. The grades of the rings would determine the size of the space and also the equivalent prices for it. The ring that Shen Yanxiao bought was only a lower-grade one with about 5 cubic meters of space. However, that was already enough for her to store everything that she looted from the house. After Shen Yanxiao had completed her preparation, she realized that she only lacked one small but crucial thing. She snuck back into her room and stored all her loot and the disguise potions into the interspatial ring. Then she went to bed. When night fell the next day, she would go to the Qilin auction house to trade for her first genuine pot of gold. The Qilin auction house was situated to the north. It occupied a large area, and it was one of the 3 most reputable auction houses in the capital. The Qilin family backed them, and thus, it was extremely popular in the capital. Everyone knew that the Qilin family was the wealthiest among the 5 great aristocratic families. When it was first established, the founder used his position to carry out a countrywide trade, and the wealth that they had managed to accumulate over the years was impossible to enumerate. There was once a rumor that claimed that the Qilin family's warehouse was comparable to the state treasury. Night fell, and the bright moon ascended. The Qilin family's auction house was brightly lit. In the quiet night scene, it was a period when the auction house was the most lively. Numerous buyers had arrived, and some were already sat down in the hall. The huge auction house was eventually filled with customers who came to bid for the items. At the back hall of the Qilin auction house, a young man, about 16 to 17 years of age, sat crossed-legged on a chair that was draped with the skin of a tiger. His handsome face wore a lazy expression as his phoenix-like eyes looked through the list of items that the person who was in charge of the auction house had given him. Only these items. The handsome young man quirked his eyebrows. He was somewhat dissatisfied with the items that were on auction that day. The 50-year-old Qi Meng was the Qilin auction house's person in charge, and he used to be a person that was held in high esteem by everyone else. However, at that very moment, he sweltered profusely as he stood before the young man. He did not even dare to take a deep breath in front of him. "Third young master, there aren't that many customers who had come to commission us for an auction these days, and I've already contacted the people from Fengqi City. In a few days, they will appoint someone to send over some valuable items." Chi Meng wiped the cold sweat on his forehead. He had no intention to make a big fuss over a minor issue, but the young man in front of him was none other than the third young master, Qi Xia, who had been appointed by the current family head to be his successor. The Qilin family was famous because of their wealth, and every family head had to have had some success in the trade business before they could ascend to the position. The third young master was the most capable one among the members of his generation, and he had already accumulated a substantial sum of capital for himself when he was only 16 years old. He even managed to plot against the few up-and-coming businesses in the Longxia Empire within those few years. Many people considered Qi Xia as the #1 prodigy of trade in the Qilin family for the past 100 years, and he could even sell useless metal scraps for an astronomical price. Chapter 29 Qilin Auction House, 2, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 29 Qilin Auction House, 2, Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. The idiom, to change something rotten into something magical, perfectly described the way Qi Xia managed the family business. It was because of Qi Xia's capabilities that the family head of Qilin family stood his ground against everyone else, as he made an exception and appointed Qi Xia as his successor in advance. Since he was the future family head, Qi Meng did not dare to be negligent. He knew that his petty tricks were simply a child's play to Qi Xia. Qi Xia quirked the corner of his lips, and a lazy smile blossomed on his face like he was a noble cat. You've barely passed, to have thought of contacting the people from Fengqi City. As he had no intention to make things difficult for Qi Meng, he waved his hand and told him to go. Among the auction houses there, the Qilin auction house owned the largest share in the market. Other than the Qilin family's prestige, much more of it was because of the unique items that they always seemed to have on auction, as those items rarely appeared in other auction houses. Within the Longxian Empire, everyone knew that the best place to auction their items would be at the Qilin auction house. Their commissions were not only comparatively lower, but they also had a vast network. That was why the items on auction could always fetch a price that significantly exceeded the seller's expectations. Thank you for your praise, third young master. Qi Meng gulped. Even though the man in front of him was only 16 years old, but the pressure that Qi Xia had on him was not inferior to the family head of the Qilin family. Fortunately, a knock on the door interrupted the pressure that nearly suffocated Qi Meng. Enter, Qi Xia said. The door opened, and an attendant of the auction house walked in and spoke deferentially. Reporting to the third young master, a little customer came to us to say that he has a batch of items that he would like us to auction off. A little customer. Qi Xia quirked his eyebrows slightly and smiled. Since it's a customer, bring him in. Third young master, Qi Meng was shocked. Could the third young master intend to receive the customer personally? Qi Xia shot him a glance, and he dared not utter another word. Shen Yanxiao stood at the entrance of the Qilin auction house. As the attendant walked away, she subconsciously touched her face that was disguised beyond anyone's recognition. The effects of the low-grade disguise potion that she bought were pretty good. Even though the duration was slightly shorter than what she would have preferred, it was still perfect for her needs. 3 hours was more than enough for her to commission her items, and if the duration was longer, she honestly did not know how she was to return to the Vermilion Bird family in that disguise. The disguise was slightly better than her face. Not only was she fairer, but her facial features also had a considerable change. Even though she didn't look gorgeous, at least she was more delicate and pretty. She had also intentionally wore men's clothing so that she would look like a young master. However, to perfect her disguise, she added a piece of insole in her boots to increase her height. It was something that was invented back in her more civilized world, and it proved to be very useful in that situation. A few moments later, the attendant came back and invited her to the back hall to discuss the business that she went there for. Shen Yanxiao followed the attendant to the back hall, and her eyes continued to survey the other attendants as they passed by them. Her gaze twinkled as she looked at the items that were sent to the front hall to be auctioned off. Due to the occupational disease of a thief, Shen Yanxiao's hands itched to steal those valuable items. Alas, she could only look but not take. Chapter 30. Qilin Auction House, 3, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 30. Qilin Auction House, 3, Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. The attendant knocked on the door when they reached the back hall. When the response came, he opened it and invited Shen Yanxiao inside. As she entered the back hall, Shen Yanxiao noticed the handsome young man who sat on the chair draped with the skin of a tiger. There was a smile in his bright eyes that were as if the stars had converged in it, and he had an indiscernible smirk on the corner of his lips. He lazily supported his chin with one hand, and he looked like a cat as it basked in the sunlight on a balcony. When Qi Xia saw Shen Yanxiao, he was also stunned. He finally understood why the attendant described him as a little customer. His thin and weak physique hid under unadorned clothing, and the pair of bright eyes on his delicate and pretty face twinkled with the purity and ignorance of someone who had yet to mature. As for his height, the little fellow in front before him did not even reach the height of his shoulders, and he looked as if he was only 13 or 14 years old. It was no wonder he was described as a little customer. Hello. I'm Qi Meng, the person in charge here. I wonder what item do you have for our Qilin auction house to sell? Qi Meng did not dare to trouble Qi Xia for something as trivial as to attend to the customers. So he revealed his esteemed position as the person in charge and quickly attended to the customer. Oh, I have a batch of jewels and goldware that I wish to commission you to sell. I wonder what kind of procedures do I need to go through for that? Shen Yanxiao had an odd feeling. Even though the middle-aged man looked steady and very experienced, she felt that the young man at the side was the one with authority. Qi Ming smiled and said, what kind of goldware and jewels do you have for sale? This must be your first time at our Qilin auction house, and thus, you don't understand our rules here. Our auction house rarely auctions goldware and jewels. We would only make an exception if it were extremely valuable. What was the scale of the Qilin auction house? If any random item could be taken out to auction there, it would be insufficient even if they had expanded the scale of their business 10-fold. Furthermore, common luxury items could usually be found at any other auction houses, and they had never liked to accept such staple goods. Unless the items were remarkably valuable, else they would not accept them on regular occasions. Otherwise, how could they have ascended to become one of the 3 largest auction houses in the capital? Shen Yanxiao was momentarily distracted. She was indeed unaware of the Qilin auction house's rules. Even though the items she stole were pretty good regardless of quality or craftsmanship, but she was unsure of the appraisal standards there. I'm not too sure myself. I'll take it out for you to see. As she was disinclined to think about those details, Shen Yanxiao opened the interspatial ring on her finger and poured out everything that was contained in it. Qi Meng initially thought that the little fellow would, at most, possess 1 or 2 pieces of items, which was what he considered as a very good thing. However, as the goldware and jewels in the interspatial ring continued to pour down in torrents and then formed a small pile on the ground, Qi Meng's eyes revealed the shock that he was in. With the amount of goldware and jewels that the customer had, it could be auctioned off for quite a large sum of money, even if they were of low quality. As he looked at them with his keen eyes, he managed to identify some of the goldware that were masterpieces, works of renowned craftsmen. The rest of the items were also of high quality and could be considered as top grade too. He did not expect that an ordinary looking little fellow could produce such an amount of luxury goods, so he was most certainly taken aback with the situation.